All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to Left on Red, where a Gen X mom and gay millennial do socialism.
Oh, we've got views on the news you can use.
Left-wing views. I'm Scott.
I'm Susan.
And I'm Brandon.
And you heard it right. It's Left on Red live from the New York City DSA office in the Lower East Side in downtown Manhattan.
The young people call it Dime Square, I've heard.
We're so excited to be here with you all. And with UAW Region 9A Director Brandon Mancilla. So
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh, and we just hit
Wait, what are we supposed to do?
$1,000. I think because of Honda. Thank you so much, Honda. If you're watching the chat, Honda Wang will get pied. Will he get pied? Is that one of the? At $4,000, you can get a pie smushed into Honda Wang's face.
We have to play the game now, though.
Oh, what game?
Okay.
We're hearing it.
Okay. All right. So each
I
one?
know Homestuck.
Each
All
one
right,
of these
Yeah,
quotes?
let's do it.
Or just each quote, or just pick one? Okay. So is this quote from Eric Adams or Love Struck? Homestruck.
Homestuck.
I don't
Like
know.
you're stuck at home.
I don't know what this is. This is the Gen X mom comparative advantage.
Yeah.
Okay, the death of the way we conduct business has become the fertilizer of the life we produce to show how we can do business. Eric Adams or Homestuck?
I'm going to go with Eric Adams.
I'm gonna go. That's like an Eric Adams at a compost event. That's an Eric Adams.
All right, no, I'm going to go Homestuck because I don't know what it is. All right, and oh man.
Woo, I got it right. Nice.
It's quite
Okay, one more.
Let me
Okay.
just make one. All right. Oh, these are all really good. All right. This is the longest one. I'm so sorry. You can't lead if you can't walk straight, and you can't walk straight with your pants down. I know this one. With your pants down around your feet. If our youth can't navigate a belt loop, then they won't be able to navigate the complexities of American Express and corporate America. Is that Eric Adams or Homestuck?
So don't say because you know. I'm going to go ahead and say Eric Adams.
I'm also going to say Eric Adams.
This is absolutely an Eric Adams quote from like talking about like teens wearing their pants.
He
too
loves
low.
respectability politics. So
One more. All right, so this is exactly why babies should not be allowed to dual-wield flintlock pistols.
that's I'm gonna say that's Homestuck.
yeah, Homestuck.
I'm going to say Eric Adams because he would say something like that too.
Oh, it was Homestuck. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Do I get like a prize for being 3 for 3?
Move on. Okay.
All right. Oh,
All right. So
we're
we're here to talk to our special guest, not just to bask in your accolades.
All right. So we gave Brandon a very brief introduction, but Brandon, do you want to introduce yourself? I think most folks on stream probably already know who you are, but I would love to hear very briefly what you do at UAW as regional director, and a little bit about, very briefly, about your personal background, how you came to be regional director. When did that happen?
Yeah, so Region 9A is 35,000 members, 50,000 if you include the retiree members we have in New England, New York City, and Long Island, and Puerto Rico. So my job as director is to essentially support our locals, our organizing drives, and represent our membership at the highest level of our union, which is our International Executive Board. For the first time ever, the membership voted to directly elect our leadership, including our president, Sean Fain, in December of 2022. And so I was a part of a slate called UAW Members United, backed by the Reform Caucus, UAWD, and we were elected. Every single member we ran was elected to the International Executive Board, and since then we've been working really hard to reform the union, to democratize it, and to also to fight as hard as possible for our membership across the different sectors.
And just for a little backup, so prior to 2022, elected leadership at the UAW was not directly elected, right? So explain how that happened.
Yeah, so for a very long time, for decades, the union was run by one single caucus. Think of it as like a one-party state, the administration caucus. and that was established by Walter Reuther, a historic president. And then what happened essentially was that concentration of power led to corruption, and so the corruption was, financial, like embezzling dues, stealing our membership's money, but it also led to weak contracts and concessions. So we came under federal monitorship because the Department of Justice put a stop to this corruption. And so we had a referendum to have one member, one vote, or to continue our delegate system, which essentially allowed hand-picking the president and the regional directors. So we had an election because that referendum passed, and that's how we ended up in this situation.
Amazing. And the referendum was a direct election too?
Yes, the referendum was one member, one vote to pick whether we were going to have one member, one vote.
We love to have actual democracy. Let's go for that UAWD. Okay.
Unfortunately, the one-party state analogy it made it sound like a little cool.
I was going to say, I could hear Ciliano's like licking his lips.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, all of that power.
He loves a bureaucratic administration that's quite efficient.
Yeah. So I think it's really meaningful. Thank you, Brendan, for explaining kind of like how things became reformed and how things are much more democratic now, because kind of leads into what we want to talk about. Probably most people watching also are aware of everything that happened in the labor movement last year, but particularly the UAW stand-up strike. And I don't want to speak too much, but I think obviously one thing that we would say is this new reform slate, the new democratic culture at UAW enabled the strength. Do you want to give us the fortune cookie explanation? What happened last year? Very brief, quick bullet details. What exactly did UAW do? How was it different from how it's done those things in the past? What did we see in the United States?
Yeah, so a lot has happened in this short amount of time, but essentially we did what the membership was asking for a very long time, and that's what happens when you bring democracy into our unions. So the membership was fed up not just with corruption and the concentration of power in top corrupt leadership. They also wanted us to fight for stronger contracts and to negotiate and empower them to fight for what they deserved. We had seen the loss of jobs. We had seen the loss of our union's power. After the bankruptcy of 2008 and the bailout of the auto companies, members gave up a ton in concessions, pensions, tiers were introduced. Folks were at different wage tiers, making barely above minimum wage in some cases. And that's something that needed to end. So immediately after Sean Fain was elected as president of our union, we got to work and launched the first ever contract campaign in the Big Three against the auto companies, basically giving the membership the chance to actually participate in the bargaining and in the campaign to win a strong contract. That ended up setting up the deadline of September 14th, where Sean was very clear that's not just a reference point. We are going to set that as a strike deadline. And for the first time in our union's history, we struck all three of the companies, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, at the same time. And we struck them strategically. We went after certain plants and not others. We kept the company guessing. We were able to take out national action against the different parts distributors. And then we just kept escalating until at the very end we had the large, most profitable plants left, and one by one we started strategically taking those out. If they engaged in good faith bargaining, we wouldn't take out a certain company, but the others would suffer. And if they would delay bargaining or not move enough, we would attack their most profitable plants. And that's how we ended up with a historic contract. We ended up restoring cost of living adjustments. We got a 25% raise. We ended those wage tiers I talked about, improved retirement security, and just as important, I think we also secured a just transition for our workers so that when in the future, as we keep building these electric vehicles, these EVs, our members won't lose work. They'll go into those jobs and be able to stay UAW members and have all the rights and benefits of our union contract.
There was a good tweet from New York City DSA comrade Gustavo after the AOC Green New Deal town hall she had earlier this week. He posted a little selfie they got together, and he was like, "We're going to win the Green New Deal with Green New Deal unions." And I'm so impressed that UAW is leading the way for that.
That's exactly right. There's not going to be a Green New Deal if labor isn't leading it.
So in addition to this historic strike, I think another major outcome from big/little d democratization of the UAW has been a new approach to don't keep keep it together, new organizing compared to before. So tell me about the new organizing strategy. What effect do you think this will have on other unions, as well as what's the strategy?
So just think about this. Since I've been alive, the UAW has not successfully organized one auto company. For decades, we've failed over and over again to organize. So back in the 1970s, the foreign auto companies, think of the Mercedes, the Nissans of the world. So Korean, German, Japanese auto companies started setting up factories, plants in the United States.
Usually in the South.
And usually in the South. Why is that? Because increasingly the South became right to work, labor was crushed, organizing was repressed, and the politicians basically sided with the companies to allow lax labor laws. So they just super exploited Southern workers, just like they do in Mexico. So the idea was, we got to stay away from the UAW. Let's go to places where the UAW won't be able to organize. So obviously that's a lot of stuff, outside of our control, right? What politicians, were doing in that moment. But we also failed to organize. We failed to organize those plants when we did try. So what's the strategy now? The strategy is we needed to set a record standard-setting contract for the big three in order to then prove to auto workers who are non-union that not only are we no longer a corrupt union, we're also a union that's going to fight and a union that's going to set life-changing contracts in the auto sector. And that's worked immediately. Thousands and thousands of workers from non-union plants started reaching out and wanting to sign cards. So we honestly had no choice because workers were already organizing. We had to follow their lead. So we launched an auto organizing drive at all the 13 non-union companies at the same time. And today we have a majority at Volkswagen in Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We have a majority of workers signed up at Mercedes' Alabama plant. And we just announced 30% at Hyundai's Birmingham, Alabama plant. And the momentum keeps going.
And I think what's really significant here is that for a long time, I think people were like, oh, can we improve the way we organize? And what happened at UAW, I think, is that you changed the actual context in which organizing was happening.
Right.
So it's less about individual strategies, like what kinds of conversations should be happening, but rather the demonstration effect. Like if you join a union, if you build power, then you can make these kinds of substantive changes and improvements to your life.
The way we're saying it is basically workers are organizing on their own, and it's not up to our staff, even if they're great staff, to do it. It's going to be the workers leading.
Yeah, and this is having not just an effect on unorganized workers, but we're seeing it in organized workers. There was someone in the chat who was like, 1 member, 1 vote, UFCW is next. I have a friend who is a laborer in New York State, LaUna, and he's telling me that him and some of his coworkers, he's already quote unquote down, he's down. And some of his coworkers are coming up to him and they're like, dude, I saw what happened in the news with UAW. Why don't we have that? Why isn't our union like that? And that's like the perfect setting for him to have this conversation of, oh, well, there's something about union democracy. There's something about being involved. And now some of those same coworkers are like a little bit more likely to go to a union meeting. And this guy's been like, he's kind of like a crank maybe, but he's been like trying to ask these people to do this sort of stuff for years and haven't yet done it. You guys, part of what UAW has done is inspire a lot of workers, both union and non-union, which has been really exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely. We're seeing workers from all over the place, all different sectors and industries organized. Just recently, we won elections at Alamo Drafthouse here in New York. 2 elections, 1 more is still in the process. And even at Nighthawk, folks are organizing. Empower Solar, a solar panelist company, is organizing. It's a great momentum right now. We're seeing the labor movement.
And do you feel like the workers in Region 9A are those who are already organized feel more energized and likely to participate in the union because of the success of the strike?
Absolutely. So I think right now is the moment where local unions, people who already have a contract and are established, want to revitalize their unions. And so we want to provide the training, the ability to engage with their union like never before. We're growing the higher ed sector here. We have an election at NYU this Tuesday and Wednesday with the contract faculty. They're going to be joining a campus with a ton of other UAW members, NYU adjuncts, grad students. More and more organizing is happening across these different campuses.
So here's a question on everybody's lips. I think well, maybe it's not. It's on my lips. It's about to be on my lips. It's been really exciting watching this happen last year, and I think everyone called it like the hot labor summer. We had an extremely good year. I take that back. We had a really good year in some ways for labor, right? Even though, in fact, the actual overall union membership in the United States, I think, decreased.
No, union increase
Density,
because there's been an overall increased number of jobs.
So even through all of those really, really successful strikes, those really, really successful threats to strike, all of these new things happening in labor, we're still losing on union density. And so one of the big questions is not just how do we do these inspiring things, what is the role of socialists, right? We're members of New York City DSA. Many members of the Democratic Socialists of America are also union members and aren't always too connected or too in tune. A lot of people actually feel kind of a little depressed about their union. I think most people come to this movement kind of feeling like, oh, my local doesn't listen to me. They're not democratic. We talk about those kind of reform efforts. So off the top of your head, and we have 10 minutes to get into this, but off the top of your head, what's the role of socialists in the labor movement, with the labor movement? What should our goals be? Give me the 2-minute answer.
So I believe in the rank and file strategy, which to me means two things. One, it means you take a job in a strategic industry that needs to be organized, and you do the slow work, which it starts slow, but it can take off because the momentum is hot right now, to actually organize a union for the first time. The other thing that means to me is joining somewhere that already has a union, getting a job somewhere where workers are already unionized, and being part of the effort to revitalize that union. That could mean like going into a local where there's a lack of democracy or transparency, or a place where there's an upcoming contract fight where you need to actually take on the boss and have a potential to win an awesome contract. The important thing there for me, for socialists, is to not think that you're going in there to tell workers what to do, to tell them what the right thing to do, what the right fight looks like. You're there to listen and learn from workers and bring your organizing skills in, and work with workers. If you take down this like top-down approach that workers need to be educated to do something, you're not going to get anywhere, especially if you're joining somewhere for the first time. So what I believe is that workers know how to organize. People know how to talk to each other, and they know what they want. They know what their demands are. What they need is the opportunity to actually take ownership of their union. So that's what I believe in.
Okay, so real case scenario, I'm a member of an AFT local, and we have that old sort of delegate model. Sure. And so as a result, we have, in my mind, we have national representation and leadership that doesn't reflect how progressive and diverse that teachers, like rank and file teachers and educators like myself, really are. So what would you say would be the first steps for like people in like the AFT?
Well, I know there are reform caucuses and efforts within the AFT, so definitely link up with those. But if you're somewhere where it doesn't have one, the most important thing is to start talking to your coworkers, I think, about what that next contract is, what's set up right now for you to already engage in, and if there's something that doesn't exist or there's no space for engagement, you create that yourself. I think bylaws are important, procedures important, that kind of stuff. But sometimes I think people who want to reform unions get a little too stuck in that. And the most important thing is actually to organize. It's to get together with workers, because not every worker is going to immediately join a reform caucus or a reform movement. But what a worker does want is a better contract with better wages, better healthcare, better retirement security. And if the leadership isn't speaking to that, but the reform movement is, that's going to be the key to changing the union. It won't be easy. With the UAW, we had government intervention, so sometimes there's a little bit of luck involved, but it is possible to reform your union.
I also want to call out something you were saying just a couple seconds ago of, you're talking about the rank and file strategy, which is this belief that we as socialists should get jobs directly in these industrial unions and work to support reform efforts from the inside, because you have a perspective as a worker on the shop floor that you don't really have anywhere else, and you have that kind of access. But another thing that you were saying in regards to that is that, and you were saying this before too, it's not up to staff, it's not up to us as socialists, not up to reformers to just go in and tell everyone what to do. This must be, in order to be successful, must be a movement of the workers, by the workers, of themselves. And I think that's been why it's been so successful. Someone in the chat earlier was like, when is Sean Fain running for president? And I think we all support that. And I think he's an exceptionally good leader.
I think we need him at the UAW more.
Like, hey, you know what? You know, people can take turns. You know, like you can have it for a little while.
That's right.
The rest of us can have it.
2028. But one of the things I think is also so important, and I think, you know, no shade to the person who wrote this, I agree. But one thing that we sort of miss is we kind of elevate individual people as celebrities.
That's right. Yeah.
But forget that it was, you know, tens of thousands of UAW workers that voted him in, that supported these strikes, that had to be organized and motivated to go on strike at their workplaces. If you didn't have all of those workers following the strike, making sure that, you know, risking their jobs and their pay and everything else and choosing to not go to work in order to collaborate on this strategy, Sean Fain would have failed. The entire strategy would have failed. And so it's just like bottom up power doesn't just like make us feel good. It's not like, yay, it's bottom up. It's not leadership. It's necessary.
It's necessary.
And I guess I want to sort of not push back, but amend what you were saying earlier, which was that it's not that workers have to be educated about their own power, but a lot of people feel like burned by unions. And so what I think one of the difficult tasks we have is convincing people who are like, well, what's the union? They see the union as external to themselves.
That's right.
Almost like HR, right? To convince people that actually you're the union and that we only can get the things we want from a union if we can imagine it. So if you can imagine a world in which a union is run democratically, where the rank and file decide strategy, in which we can take bold action to, you know, imagine a new workplace. So I would argue that what the UAW did was it changed the industrial landscape for automakers, auto producers in the U.S., right? It took industrial level national action, which then changes the landscape under which, if you're an unorganized worker at like the Kia plant in Georgia or the Chattanooga Volkswagen plant, then you're like, oh, you know, I used to think that unions were corrupt. I watched Hoffa or On the Waterfront, like whatever sort of. This just makes me seem so old.
No, I remember like
right, but like the popular imagination of unions is that they're corrupt. The leaders that they hoard. My father said this to me, like, you know, union leaders just take the workers' money, and I was like, oh, what does the government do besides take the workers' money, right? But then they spend it on whatever wars that we don't love.
As a 5-year-old child, I watched news about Jimmy Hoffa on TV.
Right, so. And that's kind of what we're doing here today, right? We're challenging these hegemonic views that come from the ruling class, that unions are there to self-enrich, as opposed to unions being a vehicle in which workers can build power. And it's hard to fight against this tendency towards this self-enrichment and this corruption. But your union has done this amazing job. And there's this concept in sociology, political science called the demonstration effect. Like when you see people protesting, you might say, I'll protest. Right. When you see UAW members democratizing it and turning it into a grassroots one worker, one vote organization, you say, well, maybe I can do that too. And so that's one of the most significant things that I think the UAW has done for the working class, the union movement, is that we're just like, whoa, we're all kind of woken up from this haze where we kind of accept the existing power structures as they are. And we're just like, well, that contract wasn't bad. Like that's that's what I say. I'm like, well, it's better than a kick in the face.
That's right.
Right? We want something better than that's better than a kick in the face.
Right. So I gave an example for.
I'll take a quick kick in the face, just for fun. Why not? Sorry.
No, from the top down, we had planned 14 contract campaign actions at the big three, because the membership and the locals felt empowered to take ownership over the contract campaign. Over 100 events were planned throughout the strike. So that just shows you that that's what it's all about. It's opening the space for that.
I like. I can't tell you enough. Like Susan and I are like preaching now, but I can't tell you enough how helpful it's been. That same attitude you just talked about, Susan. It's like at my workplace. I talked to some folks about the most likely union for us would be SEIU 1199, and some of them will tell me like, oh, at my last workplace I was in 1199. I hated it. You know, no shade to 1199. It's
little shade.
But it's just like they expressed to me that they didn't feel empowered. They didn't feel like they were part of it, and for a variety of reasons. And maybe it was just their workplace, but it made it a lot harder for me to have a conversation with them. And by contrast, like a couple, like last month when I was having a similar conversation with someone else, they were like, "Oh yeah, like those auto workers, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's the example I want you to have in your head. The auto workers. Same thing when we were trying to support Amazonians United organizing outside their warehouse. We're able to tell people, "Hey, did you guys see the news about UAW? You guys see the news about Teamsters and all these things that they won?" And it's extremely it's just very good propaganda. So I just want to.
All right. So my religious friend is going to let you finish off. 60 seconds. What do you want to tell like socialists about?
That was a weird way to say that.
About you just took away seconds from him. All right. How do you want to close it?
Before he's done.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, the union is the membership and the union is the workers. So if we're going to have a future in which we're fighting for, universal health care, strong wages, a green economy, it's going to take a labor movement. And right now at UAW, we're trying to show the way to build that from the bottom up rather than from the top down. It's going to take a lot of work, but I think socialists, again, take jobs, organize where you currently work, and just be a part of that and fight as hard as you can to build the union you want.
If you're enjoying anything that you're hearing right now, if you think that anything that Brandon said was interesting and motivating, obviously there's like a million things you should do. I think you should think about taking a job through the rank and file strategy. And there's lots of folks in likely your local chapter, of course, here in New York City DSA, that will help you find a job in that strategic industry. You should also, if you're enjoying this stream, check out bit.ly/DSATV live. Someone should be putting it in the chat, I'm sure, as well. You should donate money because we're over 100 viewers right now. We're going to be over 1,000 viewers in the reality that we create. So before you go, Brandon, do you know anything? What do you know about Twitch? Or what did you know about Twitch before coming today?
I know the word, and that's about it.
And I think that's like a really great segue to we have an actual streamer. So we all learned about Twitch streaming as of 24 hours ago. I'm kidding. We were much better prepared. But
48.
48 hours ago. But we have someone who does this a little bit more regularly. So welcome to the episode, Gremloe, who's with us virtually.
Hello.
And
I checked out your video yesterday.
Oh no.
I took notes. Yeah. Oh.
That's embarrassing.
But Gremloe, we still have Brandon here, and I know you had a question or two for him.
Yeah, Brandon. So I saw in seeing the post for everyone who's going to be involved with the discussion today that you do some work with the UAW. Did I see that correctly? That's great. We've been covering a lot of the organizing and the strike efforts with the UAW. Sean Fain, who is a king in this community, spoke about a possible general strike in 2028.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a question about how's that going to shake out, but how do you see organizing across different labor sectors, across unions that are possibly not in like the manufacturing industry, coalescing around a message of solidarity among different unions? What does that organizing effort really look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So May 1st, 2028 is our next strike deadline for the big three. But the reason we're pulling this general call out is, number one, internally, we're organizing a lot more auto companies, but we need the rest of the labor movement to also be thinking as a labor movement rather than just isolated unions representing their own members or their own industries. So this takes time, right? We haven't really moved as a labor movement in a very long time. So right now at our level, what we're doing is, building those connections, building those ties of solidarity and plans with other national unions, other major unions in the country. But I think at the local level, at the workplaces, I think everyone should be thinking about that date, May 1st, 2028. If you have contract negotiations coming up, especially this year or next year, setting the idea that you're going to have a shorter contract, not this like long 6-year contract, because you want to be part of that struggle on May Day 2028, I think that's an awesome target to have. And folks, like when you organize, it takes a long time to get that first contract. thinking about how you can be part of this movement is also really important. So I think at every level, whether it's at your workplace or whether it's, national unions, leadership talking to each other, we're being very clear that if nurses are on strike, if teachers are on strike, if flight attendants are on strike with auto workers, this is going to be a very powerful moment that's also going to be able to set a political agenda for this country, not just, what's going to be in our next contracts.
Absolutely.
It's the general strike of the online left's dream.
Right. May 1st, 2028. I'm putting it in my Google Calendar. I'll do a mass invite so y'all don't forget.
In covering the UAW strikes, one of the things that I think I really appreciate about the current era of the UAW is there's not just a sense of vision of what that worker power looks like, but also a appreciation and a knowledge of workers' history in America. Sean Fain obviously is not, he's not one person. He is the voice for the rank and file membership. But having that voice that understands like where the working class in America has come from, how we have, maybe misstepped in the past, be it, bailing out or saving the auto industry and taking pay cuts in 2008, all the way back to May Day, setting that on May Day, an actual International Workers' Day, and not, kind of the corporatized, Macy's Labor Day sale type Labor Day, but for actual International Workers' Day, I think shows a real vision of like what American working class power is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have many Labor Days, honestly. I'll take all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the. Thank you so much again,
All right, thanks for
Brandon.
having me, guys.
Thank you,
All right,
Brandon.
a true king of queens. This was an all queens panel, and I hate to end that.
You want this shirt that overly shows my nipples? I'm so
No,
sorry.
we love
He's
it.
not
Like
sorry.
3 years ago. It doesn't fit me so well anymore. But if you would like this shirt, is this shirt still available at the merch? What's the merch link? Shop.socialist/NYC. Oh gosh. Someone's gonna put it in the chat and it's gonna sound better. You should check out all of the really great DSA merch, which is a lovely segue to
We've now made it an interborough panel.
unfortunately.
Okay, so welcome, Caitlyn.
Hi.
And so now welcome to episode 2 of Left on Red. This is we got our really awesome labor UAW theme, and now we're moving on to we've got 2 folks who are a little bit of like left influencers online.
Right, but they're not.
I don't know about me.
Unlike us, I've got voices. I've got a face for podcasts, right? But these are people who are video influencers.
Video influencers.
Right.
You guys want to introduce yourselves really briefly? Gremloe, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Gremloe. I'm Austin McNamara on my other social media. I am a political commentator on Twitch. Every day at 7 a.m. Central Time, we go live and we talk about various stories that are going on. It is a leftist community, and we've tried to make it a very inclusive environment while also having those difficult conversations that might be a little hard to talk about for some more oppressed communities. But the main message that I try and drive forward in my programming is first and foremost one of empathy that always starts from a place of trying to understand a lot of the difficult things that we struggle with, be it apartheid in Palestine or the struggles of the working class Americans. I have a background in sociology, so that's kind of where I drive a lot of my commentary from. But yeah, we are just live every day trying to not stare too much into the void.
Where are you from?
I'm from Louisiana.
Okay, amazing.
7 a.m. is a strong time.
What's that?
For a daily stream, like a strong time.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I'm a gamer, but I don't really use Twitch. And people like use Twitch. It's they're watching.
Oh yeah.
He also doesn't appreciate a highly regimented, disciplined sleep schedule, though, so he is impressed. Okay.
I know.
I'm
I love
envious.
it. Yeah.
All right, and now we have Caitlyn. Can you introduce yourself, Caitlyn?
Sure. Hi, my name is Caitlyn. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of New York City DSA in Brooklyn. And I run a TikTok account, which is just Caitlyn with a bunch of dots in it. Yeah, I've been making TikTok videos for a couple of years, and I primarily talk about like pop culture trends and the latest like extremely dumb TikTok trend and what it says about capitalism and the need to organize for a better world through socialism. So, yeah.
So you both sort of take a sociological perspective, right, in your streaming work, your video work. Okay, great. So as people who don't, as I will self-identify as someone who doesn't understand the video social media world very well, but I'd love to hear perspectives on like what is like the power, the importance of socialist communications / propaganda, whatever your preferred term is. And Gremloe, we'll hear from you first.
Oh, sure. I actually am not afraid of the term propaganda. I mean, anything that we engage with online is a form of propaganda in one way or the other. Particularly in my space, I'm not really on TikTok. I drone on too much for like short segmented programming. And I also talk kind of slow. This space, for a period of time, especially if this is a very online term I'm about to use, post Gamergate, was a very reactionary environment and harbored a lot of anti-worker, anti-progressive sentiment. It has monumentally changed over the last 4 years, I would say, but there are still opportunities for deprogramming, education, and radicalization in some perspectives. Many people that I work with within this space are not political content creators, but I am, over the last few years, seeing a sea change of people who have been reticent to kind of engage with things that would otherwise be like very alienating to their audiences. Things like, feminist ideas or progressive sentiment or, countering reactionary narratives start to become more comfortable with that. And I find a lot of value in a space that has historically harbored a lot of those negative sentiments, starting to, dip their toes in it, even if that's not their whole content. Seeing people who, play Minecraft all day or, they do workout streams, starting to be like, hey, let's actually talk about like supporting Palestine, or let's talk about how do we make this a place that's, more comfortable for women and trans people. It's definitely changing, and I see a lot of value in this space in particular.
I have like a big follow-up question, and so maybe Caitlyn, I want to hear you answer it and also give your answer, your perspective, because what Gremloe was just saying right now was about people who aren't traditionally in the political space and then transitioning. And one thing I've been thinking about a lot is, Susan and I, our podcast, we try to be exciting for people that are not yet socialists, that don't think about this stuff too
I think about
much.
unorganized socialists.
Exactly. People who are really new to this, and we try to talk in really approachable terms. And I wonder, like, being explicitly political, are we reaching them? Would it be more valuable if we were, being different things, like, oh, we're just gaming content, we're fashion content. So I'm curious, Caitlyn, one, your perspective on, like, left comms strategy overall, or like the importance and power of this, and then two, how are we reaching people? Can we reach people with explicitly political content, or is it, do we have to trick people into it with like if that's a better term? I don't know. How do you use TikTok to reach people that might not otherwise be engaging with leftist stuff?
Yeah, an evil grin like crept across my face because this is my Roman Empire. This is my like obsession. Susan mentioned like unorganized socialists, and I think that's a really good way to think about it. Like in Secrets of a Successful Organizer, the Labor Notes book, which if people are not familiar with, you can definitely read online or buy, and I recommend it. It's a guide to organizing in your workplace. In this book, they talk about how in our workplaces, the boss or the capitalist class already organizes us. But that form of organization is disorganization, where they're pitting workers against each other, or they're physically dividing the space of a workplace so that workers don't have a place to talk to one another outside of like the watchful eye of their employer. And I think that media and culture is exactly the same. The capitalist class invests billions and billions of dollars in media. I mean, it would be wrong to even call it investment. Like they own all of the media infrastructure especially in the United States, but really around the world. And we have at this particular moment in history, I would say, a almost unique lack of socialist media to respond to it. In the past, like political socialist parties or radical left parties like have had their own independent newspapers. Like the Communist Party had the Daily Worker, the Socialist Party had Appeal to Reason. In Russia they had Iskra, and these were all at times when like it was so hard to do that. Like people would spend 2 hours printing one pamphlet, and now you can make a TikTok that can reach 2 million people in just 30 minutes or something. And yet I feel like we're doing that less than we used to in the past, or we're taking it less seriously than we have before. There's almost like a primacy that's placed on like the real organizing happening in the streets, which I agree with to an extent. But I think that in that process, we've really lost the ability to think about like how we can reach people on a really massive scale, where in ways that are interesting to them, in ways where we're talking about, pop culture and TikTok trends, or we're talking about gaming, or we're like, reaching people who are kind of on the fringes of our politics, and who maybe are not exposed to organized socialist like spaces. But like another thing that I've kind of come into by making TikTok videos is realizing that like a lot of our ideas are already really popular. And like people feel and people know like that our economy is fucked up and it's not working for the working class. Our government is spending our tax dollars on a completely unjust, immoral war on Gaza. And we feel disempowered, and millions of people share this sentiment. But I think a much smaller like subsect of that group of people realize or have been exposed even to the idea that the solution to that is organizing for socialism. So yeah, that's my tirade on why.
We love it. We love a tirade.
I would love for you to keep going. And so maybe I'll prompt you both to keep in the theme. One of the things that you were saying, because I like 1,000% agree. And I think what we were hearing from Brandon earlier is a little bit feeding into what you were saying, which was all of that phenomenal organizing that they had done at UAW. So much of it was so impactful for the rest of the United States working class because it was popularized, because it was propagandized, because there were so many people on social media talking about it, sharing the news. And I go on this all the time where I think social media in some ways has democratized information. Maybe 20 years ago, without Twitter or Instagram the way we have them now, not as many people would understand what's happening in Palestine and support this Palestinian cause. But now, like, you can't get away from it. My brother, who is totally not political, just called me up one day and he was like, oh my God, have you been seeing the things on Instagram about what's happening to the people in Gaza? And I was like, wow, yes, I have. So I love that like emphasis on this propaganda and how we do that. But you were talking a little bit at the end of, okay, how do we move people from maybe these positions are popular with them? How do we get them to start thinking about, should we be organized? And this question is for both of you.
But we'll hear from Brandon first.
Gremloe.
Sorry, Gremloe.
This question is for both of you, which is with the people that interact with your content, with the people that you're reaching, do you move them into action? Can they be moved into action? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, people can certainly be moved into action. I 100% believe. And to someone's point earlier, I think everyone's a leftist. They just don't have the vocabulary or the the background, because we're negatively incentivized to kind of like be wary of these ideas, these words that we often use on the left, like solidarity or decommoditize, right? Like a lot of those words, that's for the book club, right? One of the biggest regrets I have with my career is starting out exclusively doing political content. If I would have started out doing gaming and then grown an audience doing that, then I could have disarmed more people. I think holding to your principles is very important, but a great example of this is someone like Hasanabi, who has that dude bro frat boy aesthetic, which disarms a lot of people initially, maybe in the beginning, kind of has a reputation now, but not one that I think is negative or anything. But disarming people so that they don't have that immediate, this guy's a leftist, this guy's, wearing an ushanka and waving the communist flag. That certainly makes people wary. But if we start with, all we're asking for, all we're telling you is you deserve better, and it's not your fault if you are in the working class that you don't have better, there is a system that is set up against you. Here's how it works. If we start from the position of, I'm not trying to turn you into, a socialist, that'll be cool, but I just want you to advocate for yourself and organize through that. And we can certainly direct people either on, my platform, Twitch, or on TikTok towards that action. We've, raised money for unions. We've raised money for charities, be it, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund or Trans Lifeline. That action that is garnered through kind of like the parasocial relationships that's developed with these internet personalities can be one that is very valuable towards these ends. I think the main thing when we're trying to advocate for whether it's socialism, whether it's for workers' rights, is that most of the people who are watching these streams or TikToks, they are likely at work with one earbud in. I call them my one earbud army. And they're watching this, and if you can speak to that ennui that they feel about their job, that is a great entry point for them.
Yeah.
Well, I'll rephrase the question for you, Caitlyn, because one, how are we getting folks from this kind of comm stuff to organizing? And Gremloe kind of touched on a little bit of the parasocial relationships. He said the name Hassan that looms large, the hot leftist that's popular on Twitch. How are we getting the Hassan listeners? How are we getting these people to take action, to organize?
Or the people who are not comfortable with left language or whatever.
Sure.
Right?
Well, I love this question. I mean, on the subject of Hassan, this is great connective tissue of how we bring people from ideas to action, which is, I think, really at the core of what we're interested in doing as organized socialists. Was a couple years ago in YDSA, when I was co-chairing the YDSA National Labor Committee with my comrade and friend Willem. We launched this summer program called Red Hot Summer, which was a labor training program targeted primarily to students, YDSA age people, so college students, high school students, or just people, young adults, to train them on how to organize their workplaces in a online Zoom kind of webinar program that lasted 2 to 3 months. And we had 15 volunteer organizers who had all independently run their own successful union drives, whether it be at their college campuses or at their Starbucks workplaces, or wherever. They were acting as mentors. And so we did our first launch promo call on Hassan's stream, and 45,000 people watched it. And from there, 1,000 people attended the first launch call, and then we had 300 consistent participants throughout the summer. And these were people from all around the world who were learning and talking to each other about how they can organize their workplaces. And it was extremely exciting. And we did it again last summer, and I think we plan to do it again next summer, hopefully. I think that it speaks to a larger question of again, of moving from ideas to action, where in capitalist society, it is the rational decision to remain unorganized and to look out for yourself. The way that capitalist society is structured is such that you probably on individual utility maximization basis, you would benefit to screw over all your friends and family and everyone you love and become Jeff Bezos. So the task of socialists is to build socialist organization and infrastructure such that we can make collective action become the rational response, so that 1,000 or 1,000,000 united workers who are bargaining for a collective contract can win light years more than what they could do independently, trying to negotiate with their boss behind closed doors about how they can get a raise or get a day off or something. And it's something that we've seen, that we are thinking about with this past year of strikes and contract negotiations, and people coming together and doing that. So yeah.
All right. Thank you. We're running out of time, but I wanted to ask Gremloe really quickly to tell us a little bit about your DSA organizing.
Yeah. So
and you get 2 minutes.
When I joined DSA, it was in 2019, and the Baton Rouge DSA had kind of shrunk because of burnouts of a big problem within activist circles, and I wanted to get involved. This was very early on in my political activism career, and we kind of revamped everything, did a bunch of recruiting, made a bunch of propaganda flyers that I actually still have one on my shelf right here that I keep for nostalgia. We started with our collaborative work with FITE, F-I-T-E, Famine is the Enemy, and started with mutual aid, just doing food distribution to a local shelter that branched into doing a free kitchen, into a free library, into organizing with local BLM during 2020. And it's kind of just grown from there. And it's a difficult thing, I would say, to recruit within more rural areas. Baton Rouge it's a city, but it's really just a big suburb. And organizing in rural areas and suburb communities can be difficult because everything's very sprawled out, especially during the pandemic. But I've always told at least my community that the people who are doing the real work are the ones that are in the streets doing brake light clinics. They're the ones that are doing mutual aid, like giving out clothes to people. Those are the people who are doing the real work. It's not, storming the vanguard and, carrying a flag through the streets. The real dedicated work that you don't hear is where it matters the most, because the people who benefit from that will remember it. They'll remember that it was, this organization that was helping them out whenever they were, struggling with housing, or, couldn't afford a repair at a auto shop to do a brake light change. That is where I think the most change happens, and people appreciate that there's somebody in their community that's helping them out.
So if you are listening, I think the number one takeaway from everything that Gremloe just said and everything that Caitlyn just said is not just continue to watch, like, subscribe, but take action, organize. You can only do these things collectively. That work isn't going to look like, the most glamorous thing in the world, but it's going to be really meaningful. Caitlyn, something that you said earlier, I 1,000,000% agree with someone in the chat was like, oh my God, please clip that. That was perfectly said about the collective action and the impact that we have on the boss together. Gremloe, everything that you just said about like the hard work of organizing, what it actually looks like on the street. I hope everyone is listening. And to kind of take us into that theme of organizing and all the other things, we have Rumka here.
Hi everyone. It's so nice to be here. I'm so excited to have everyone in the room here. My name is Ramka. I'm with DSATV here in NYC DSA. I'm really excited to be with this incredible team around us. I wish we could pan the camera around right now and show you all the amazing people that are here. We are. I just want to explain. I want to give a little bit of a crash course for people who don't know what Twitch is or how it really works. So there's a couple things that are really useful to know. First of all, I recommend using night mode. Let's start there.
Yes, thank you.
I don't like getting flashbanged by the white chat. That's something that I think most veteran Twitch users will be very familiar with. Secondly, what's really useful is there's extensions on your browser that are kind of essential at this point. You have emotes through several different extensions. I use 7TV, that's a catch-all, but there's also BTTV and FFZ, Franker Face Z emotes. These are all, if you're looking at weird words that people are posting in chat and you don't understand what they're saying, that's because they're writing emotes. So when people say PogChamp or people say mod check, that might not mean anything to you, but in the Twitch world, that means something, right?
Pog glossary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I don't think there is a glossary.
I need an annotated Google Doc from you at the end of this, okay?
It's a learning process.
Sending me Instagram reel
that
I saw on TikTok 2 years ago.
This is the Gen X mom advantage.
So these are things that are kind of in the learning curve. You don't learn these things when you sign up for Twitch. It's also kind of hard to find the broadcasters that you might like. So it takes some digging, and sometimes you will find. It took me a while to find Gremloe, for instance, but I found him through Hassan, and I'm so glad I did.
Oh, thank you.
So of course. So with that, I just want to talk about what we're going to do with DSATV. We're going to do special events like this, but we are also planning, hopefully, if we can raise enough money, to do a weekly news digest live stream. Where we talk about the issues of New York City and the nation from our DSA perspective. We want to focus on the actions that we can take as members of DSA or wherever you are. And we want to have great conversations. You know, maybe we can do like a lo-fi Charlie Rose. I don't know. We want to have fun gaming sessions and things like that. We're going to do all kinds of fun stuff. But fundamentally, I'm just really excited that we're finally here on Twitch. We're bringing everyone on board. And later today, if you're not aware, we're bringing all of our insurgent candidates are going to be here tonight, together with some electeds that you will probably know if you're here in New York City. And we're going to have a great time. So thank you for tuning in. Welcome to DSA TV here in NYC DSA.
People claps in chat.
And
next up, we have a video that we produced at the ceasefire rally of, what was it, October 20th? I forget. October 21st, I think it was. This was several months ago. This was one that we actually live streamed and then edited. So let's take a look. Shall we?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Out here demanding a ceasefire because there's an impending genocide in Gaza, and we need every person who believes in the safety and dignity of human beings to call for a ceasefire now.
This is a multi-generational, multi-racial movement for ending this genocide.
So you know, I am in mourning for my people, but who are my people? My people are other Jews, American Jews, and the thousands of Israeli civilians, the 1,000 Israeli civilians who died the weekend before last. And my people are the over 4,000 Palestinians who have already died in this war, on whom white phosphorus is raining, who are being evicted from their homes and their land, who aren't my people.
We're under the rain. We're drenched, and our governor and our mayor, they're drenched in the blood of Palestinians who have been murdered. And they continue to smear and dehumanize Palestinians. And they don't care about the fact that there are Palestinian New Yorkers here who have family and friends back in Gaza that are being killed indiscriminately.
I'm here to demand an immediate ceasefire and to tell Israel to stop killing civilians in Gaza. They are committing mass atrocities.
These attacks on civilians, destroying schools, hospitals, houses of worships, homes, and the most essential parts of people's life and community. It has to stop. We need to I lost my stuff. So stay from your heart, brother! said, we need to condemn the attack on civilian people in Gaza. We need to ask this administration, the Biden administration, and member of Congress to call for an immediate ceasefire to allow a humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. We will no longer be silent. More than 1 million people are displaced, and they are becoming again refugees. They are already refugees, but now they are being forced to move to unknown places. We must put an end to this war. We must call this administration to stop sending military aid to Israel, and it's time for this administration and people of conscience to work for an everlasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. What we want, ceasefire now, and free Palestine.
And we will not look away from the horrifying, unfolding genocide that is happening right now in Gaza. Ceasefire! As a rabbi, so many people in my community, so many Jewish people in my life are in mourning right now. People that I love are grieving family members and beloved friends and students who were brutally killed. So many in my community have learned over the past 2 weeks that their friends and family are among the hostages. Our hearts are broken and our grief is massive. And so many Palestinians in my life are also in mourning right now and are living in terror.
These are war crimes and crimes against humanity, plain and simple, and still, Kathy Hochul and Eric Adams are openly supporting them. We are clear in our demand. Ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. And we will stay out here in the streets every day until we reach this demand. This is not the first protest. If this is your first protest, get ready for your second and your third and your fourth. If this is your 10th protest, get ready for 11, 12, and 13. You are not alone. We are all in this together. We refuse for this to happen with our tax dollars. We refuse for this to happen in our name, and we will not stop until a ceasefire is reached.
Occupation has